Hello, everyone. I'm absolutely thrilled to talk to all of you today on this Global Trends Festival. I'm privileged to lead the digital native business for India, for AWS, and working with some of the most innovative and fast growing companies in India. Today, I'm talking to you about how some of the most fast growing digital companies use modern data platforms to really become truly data driven companies. If you look at, and I'm going to start with a very cliche statement of, data is the new oil, which I think all of you would have heard at some point in time. And what crude oil actually did to industrial revolution, data is doing to the digital world. And if you look at, there are three things that has happened. We have an explosion of data, with the internet and mobile and social. If you look at India itself, by 2022, we're projecting that the smartphone user base will be about 820 million. Not only we are producing data at a very fast rate, but at the same time, the means of storing that data and the cost of producing that data is also coming down. A lot of it is because of public cloud. The second thing which has happened with it is the explosion of personas, both at the production side and also at the consumption side. And I think third, which is very interesting, is we stopped looking at data as snapshots, but we're looking at data in motion and be able to make real-time decisions from data. Now, we worked with a number of digital companies across the globe. And by virtue of that experience, we have actually come up with we kind of made a data flywheel, which has 5 spokes. I'm going to quickly talk to you about those 5 spokes. And, probably, I hope that will help you in your data architecture and journey. The first one there is you got to kill the silos and move to data lakes. Data usually in organizations sits in silos with applications and different forms and shape. You need one place where you can put all of this data together, because that's where the value is. And that's why if you look at Amazon, we have a service called S3, which is an object-oriented storage where you can put all of this data together. The second is you need an ability to use the right tool for the right data on the right use case, which basically means the way you treat unstructured data is different than you treat structured data. And the way you treat real-time data is very different than you treat unstructured data. So you need those tools, and if you look at the Amazon platform today, we have Redshift for data warehouse, we give you Athena if you want to just do a simple query, EMR for unstructured data, Kinesis for real-time data. So you need those tools to be able to generate value out of it. The third is you really need to move to a microservices architecture and build apps that are data-driven. Modern apps are very different. The scales are different. Millions of users, exabytes of data, microsecond performance. You can't build those apps the way you're building traditional apps. So you have to go to the lowest common denominator and build an architecture which is highly distributed. And when you're building this architecture, and that's the fourth one I'm coming to, don't put round data in a square table, which basically means that different data has to be treated differently. And the times of using traditional, old, punitive, expensive databases has gone, and the time has come to use purpose-built databases. So we today give you different flavors, whether it's a relational database or a key value store or an in-memory database or a graph database. So you have to use the right database for the right use case when you're building those apps. And lastly, the fifth one is you have to make AI and ML easier to use in your applications. And that's one of our goals, is to give AI and ML in hands of every developer. And that's why you look at our stack, we have 3 layers. The bottom one is for machine listeners and the experts, where we give you GPU instances and things like those, but not everyone has that, have machine learning experts. And that's why the second layer where we talk about, where we have SageMaker, which basically a managed service help you build, train, and deploy models. And the top layer where, it's the easiest to use, which is AI, which is mimicking human behavior, where we have things like Poly, which is text to speech, or personalized for recommendations or forecast, and number of those services. So this is a flywheel. If you do these five things, there's something that we built working with a number of organizations, and across the globe. If you look at some of the large organizations, Netflix or Airbnb or Lyft, or even in India, like Make My Trip, or Delivery or Dream11, which built a large data platform and process about 2.5 billion events per day and about 2.5 billion 5 terabyte of data per day. I'm sure all of this will be broken in this IPL, I hope. And Near, which is an ad tech analytics platform, which have actually used the batch processing and reduced the time from 45 minutes to 10 minutes. Or Policy Bazaar, who actually use data to predict what the customer is going to ask the agent, and then embedded AI, which is poly text to speech, really automate the response. And with that, I have a very esteemed customer with me today, Manmeet Todi. Manmeet is the CTO of Paytm. Pleasure to have you, Manmeet, with me today and talk to you. I thought we'll bring it all together and bring it to life with a live example of somebody who's doing it very well.
All right, thanks. Thanks. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite. I'm the CTO for payments for Paytm. I run the payments vertical, which is comprises of a lot of things. Starts with our payment gateway. Our the FASTag system. That we use for crossing tolls these days. It's part of the whole same ecosystem. The wallet, which has been one of our oldest products, but very relevant and growing still. I also own the recharges and bill payments platform, that customers use to make sure that they're paying their bills on time, paying digitally, and especially in these times with COVID hitting us, it's been a boon for customers, to pay everything from the convenience of their homes. Then, in addition to that, I own the whole merchant experience, where merchants are offered a variety of products and services that they can use to conduct their business. And in addition to that, I run some infrastructure components like the whole onboarding experience for our customers, merchants, all types of customers, security, big data, which is one of the pillars of this discussion. So that's kind of that's what I do at Paytm. In terms of what I'm looking to do, as the CTO of Paytm, there are a few things that come to mind. Digital business is growing, and so scaling out our business, making sure technology can scale with the growing demand, making sure we are reliable, making sure we have technology that's reliable, making sure that we have technology that's secure. It's one of the most important things for our customers. Making sure that we are automated in everything we do, and making sure that we're data driven. So these are some of the things that keep on challenging me, that that I'm excited about, and love to chat a little more about these with you today.
Absolutely, thanks for that lovely introduction, Manmeet. So you're at the middle of this digital revolution in India, right? And at the middle of it, really disrupting the payment industry. So tell us, how do you look at data, and what role does data play in all of this?
Yeah, it's a great question, and more so in the last, I would say, 8 to 10 months or a year, the movement India becoming a digital economy has just fastened, and we've seen very rapid movement in this direction. The mobile ecosystem has become huge, and it's been huge for some time, but it's just grown in importance. And Paytm is one of the forerunners in this space. We've been around. We've been leading some of these this transformation with some with innovations that started as a wallet many years ago. We've launched a bunch of financial instruments. Wallet obviously is one. Then we have postpaid, which is another one, and obviously the government has been also spearheading some really big innovations in the space. UPI, we all know UPI has been one of the biggest innovations in recent times. So coming to the question as to how data powers all of this, right? How are we using data to make this transformation happen? It's all about how do you help customers? I think that's the question you have to answer. And when you talk about customers, you're not only talking about consumers who are using your app to service various workflows, but also your merchants, right? They're also customers. They are conducting their business, and they need equal help in navigating through this financial transformation that's happening in India. So if you talk about the consumer, it's a pretty straightforward case. I mean, we all know, things like personalizing services for customers. For example, if you look at the Paytm app, we change some of we have a lot of services we offer. So what goes onto the homepage is, fact, we have complex algorithms behind the scenes which figure out, what's trending this week. You have IPL, so there are things related to IPL which start trending. So you surface those services which are more important for customers, so that it's easier for them to find them, navigate, use them. Simple things, where we use data, just a bill reminder service. Hey, you have your bill due tomorrow. You don't want to miss it, so that you don't get a late payment fee or something like that. That's based on data. I mean, it's a very simple use case. Let's forget the trends and all of that, right? Just a simple use case like bill reminders. Just it helps customers remember, they go, they complete the action, and they're done. Now, but I'd like to also talk about the merchant side of things. On merchants especially, right? You have your kirana stores, you have mid-level stores, you have big merchants. We have to make sure they have the right tools. And if you take bigger stores, or let's say a supermarket chain somewhere, in your city, they accept through various instruments, credit cards, debit cards, UPI, wallet, everything. Now, what really is working for them? I mean, how do they find out, hey, what should I really promote? If I have to promote a particular thing, which are these instruments which are working best for me? Is the net banking working best for my customers? If, let's say, I'm an online merchant, small startup, right? Are cards working the best? Is UPI working the best? Is wallet working the best? We offer insights like this to customers based on their transactions. Hey, for you as a merchant, as an individual merchant, these are the insights we can show you. UPI is probably working best for you, or the wallet. So, or this particular, these set of banks are working really well for you. The success rates are highest with these banks. So displaying that information to merchants, helps them, tune their business models, change how, what offers they want to put forth to customers, promote those instruments, financial instruments that are working better for their customers. And these are some of the things we've tried to, a couple of examples of things we've tried to do to use data to help our customers, whether they're end consumers or merchants. I mean, I have tons of examples, but then that would probably be a 1 hour discussion on its own.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love the merchant idea. So tell us a little bit more, Manmeet, specifically on everybody has challenges, right? It's not an easy problem to solve, and there's so many common pitfalls and so on and so forth. I spoke about few of them, when I was just talking a bit a minute before. But what are some of your technology strategies, both on the technology side as well as on the organization side? Because also, how you organize, because that's also an important piece in becoming a data-driven organization. So tell us some of those learnings, that we can take.
Sure. I've one thing I've realized. Let me talk about organization first, especially from a data perspective. You spoke about microservices. I'll just expand on that a little bit. I worked in a company where we used to call a team as a 2 pizza team. And the 2 pizza team is basically a team that you can feed with 2 pizzas, right? That's the size, 6 to 8 people. That's the size of a team. So that design, that organizational design of having a small team, a lean team that is independent, that owns a particular business domain. They are the single owners of that domain, and nobody else in the organization owns that domain, including the data that powers it, including the services that powers it. That, in my mind, is one of the most efficient organizational designs for structuring teams. Now, that helps because it helps with agility. It helps prevent data duplication. You don't have 2 teams which are, have the same, getting the same kind of data. and the same servicing the same kind of needs. So it leads to discipline. This requires discipline, though. I mean, there's often, we want to take shots, say, I'm just going to go and spin here, which will do something similar, but a very slightly different use case. It's very compelling because you want to move fast and, but that leads to problems later on, especially with data. And, you want to avoid that. So the second learning I've had is have a common data infrastructure team. Now, the benefits of doing this are just unmeasurable. If you have a common data infrastructure team, let's talk about what are the pitfalls of not having a common data infrastructure team. If you do not have a common data infrastructure team, what ends up happening is every single team is building their own data pond. They're not building a data lake, they're building a data pond. And everybody's investing in building their own data infrastructure, setting up their own clusters, creating, having, their own data storage pipelines, or storage areas, and that leads to a lot of wasteful expenditure for a company. It leads to a lot of duplication of data. Leads to a lot of inconsistent reporting because, they're saying, oh, as of this date, as of 12th of October, my metrics were this. And, somebody else is producing metrics similar because they had a different cutoff or something else. They have different metrics to show, which don't, really match well with the other team's metrics. So you have a lot of data duplication, inconsistency, and wasted effort. So always have a common data team. This team should be responsible for maintaining the entire data platform, providing data services, as a service to folks. So not only providing a destination where people can, flow their data to, but also how do you query that data? How do you want to, what are, if you're using EMR or using, let's say you're an AWS, customer, what kind of clusters have you set up? I mean, do you have clusters that are following the best practices? For example, AWS has great guidance on, how to set up a good, Athena cluster or a EMR cluster, and you don't have to really, learn those things again. So a central team can really set up these clusters, offer these data services, data transformation services to the entire organization, and people can use that to do whatever they want. And it provides one view of data, reduced costs, and everything else that goes with it. And while answering this, I also said, I mentioned data lakes, and creating a data lake is, I don't know, if you don't have a data lake, you're basically going to struggle in doing anything meaningful in your business today because data ponds, as I said, don't work well. People have multiple issues with that. The metrics you don't have a single source of truth. Simple. Everybody has their own version of truth. So also another advantage of having a data lake is you can slice and dice the data on multiple dimensions because you have the entire ecosystem data there. So if you want to slice or dice the data in any way, you can do that. And obviously there are other learnings that I've had on data lakes. Make sure you have metadata capability on top of your data lake. Something like an AWS Glue can help. So these are some of the best practices around how you organize. How do you look at basic technology? Data lakes used to be a novel concept a few years ago. They're no longer that. It's an essential thing. There's another aspect of this. Should you continue to be traditional batch based? To be true, we've moved away from being a batch-based organization in most areas. There's still a few use cases where you have end reports and this whole thing that probably still requires some batching, but most of it now is done in real time. For example, we have in Paytm we have something called Pulse, which basically at real time reports out problems that customers may be facing in using the app. So it's a real-time system. If we see, hey, some pages are not loading and customers are dropping off from a certain area, they're not going beyond this point, we immediately come to know because that whole ecosystem, it transmits through, the app transmits to a Kafka, pipeline that we have. We run Flink on EMR, post that, and we have Druid to do some other aggregation, and then we look at things on top of QuickSight. So, that's a real-time system. So in 15 minutes, you really know what's happening with customers. And it allows you to go and, solve those problems if your app's not behaving in an optimal manner or if you want to go and tune it. So these are some of the things I've learned over time, organizationally, and uh, from a technology. Like to automate as much as you can. Whether using Terraform or something else. Automate as much as you can. That's just a standard good practice to do.
Perfect. Thank you. There were so many words of wisdom there, Manmeet. I'm sure people will benefit from it. Uh, my second last question, next question to you is, having data is one, and using these different tools, all of that, but also making insights out of it is a different ball game. And I also want to blend in a little bit on how do you use the modern tools of machine learning and or AI, at an abstract level uh,
Yeah.
today to in your data journey.
Sure, sure. I spoke briefly about the merchant analysis thing, upfront, where that's more like statistical analysis, not really, AI or ML. I can pick up a couple of samples, right? For us, fraud mitigation is very, very critical. That's one of the biggest things. If you're a fintech company, you really have to solve for that. I mean, there's no way, you can allow frauds to happen. So we built, we've used data to build a model which basically has taken past transactions. We've picked up attributes and features based on past transactions, trained a neural network based model where we've basically said, okay, if and obviously we've had fraud cases in our training sets and valid transactions, and we've trained a model, a neural network model, which basically tells us what's the probability of a transaction that's coming in to be a fraud or not, and this is in real time. So, we've had to innovate a little bit because if you have very big models based on a lot of attributes, it can add latencies for this evaluation to happen. So, we've innovated a little bit there. But basically, our intent has been what's the probability of this particular transaction being a fraud? Is this somebody who's using someone else's stolen card to go and do a transaction? We try to answer that question and make sure that we absolutely don't allow any fraudulent transactions. Now, neural networks have helped us in this case. Obviously, we did logistic regression and other technologies as well, but this neural network one worked out to be best for us. There's another small example I can pick up. Sometimes we see our customers behaving like merchants, right? I mean, you have somebody who has the Paytm app, and we see them, and we have a model now again, which is based on gradient boosting trees. It's a tree based algorithm, which basically looks at these users of a platform and says, okay, is there a chance that this person's actually missing out because he doesn't know that we have a merchant offering, or he's using the consumer path to gather payments from customers, from his customers. And so we have a model which predicts the probability of a consumer being a merchant, and then we go to him and say, hey, you'd be better off using our merchant services. We offer a lot, and it's feel free to use it. And it because we have a lot of things. Our merchant offerings give payouts. You can do payouts through our platform. You can pay your bills through the merchant platform. You can track. We have a kata in our merchant offering, so you can keep track of expenses, who owes you money, and all of that. So that's another use case where we've used AI and ML. There are tons of use cases around this in our organization, but these are just a few to call out.
Any tips that you want to give people? Because some of the questions that I usually hear is people, where do I start? In my
Yeah.
data journey, what metrics should I measure? How about skill set and training and things like those?
Yeah. Uh, I have a very brief answer to this question. And some of it again comes from my past experience. Measure the right things. I'll make that statement. And what are the right things to measure? Let's talk about that for a second. A lot of us are focused on output metrics. Hey, what's my revenue looking like? How many customers do I have? Are my transactions growing? And we get obsessed about GMV, and we get obsessed about my transactions volumes and all of that. That's a good thing to look at. But I think more importantly, what I've learned over the years is look at your input metrics. Things like, what's the latency of a page loading on your app? You know, is it loading under 2 seconds? Because we know that if you don't look at the input metrics, you have a lot of blind spots that could hurt you someday. Even if your business is booming right now, if you don't measure your input metrics, and I talked about latency, but that's not the only thing. Your customer goes through an entire workflow when he transacts on your app. You know, what's your how many tickets are you getting from customers? After they've bought your product, how many contacts are you getting? Are customers generally happy after they've transacted, or they have a lot of questions after they've transacted? Those are some of the metrics you should look at. I talked about latencies, I talked about failure rates. How many times are your transactions failing? Why are customers dropping off midstream? You must have metrics around those, because if you don't measure those, you will never know what to improve in your offering. And I have one rule for me, that's my personal rule, that always make sure what's running on production is top notch before you try building a lot of new things. Obviously, you don't there's an extreme that you can go to, and you don't want to probably go to that extreme, but make sure that your customer on your platform is being able to do what you're telling him or offering to him without any problems or hitches, right? So measure your input metrics, make sure that you're improving them, and provide visibility to all of that. Make sure that this data is visible to the organization. Make sure you're reviewing this data once every week. You have an operational meeting, or you have a weekly business review, or a weekly operational excellence review. You go ahead, review all of these things. That's the only other thing I'd probably like to add at this point.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for talking to me, Manmeet, today. It's always a pleasure. And let me just summarize what I heard, and I think there are 4 or 5 takeaways that I'm taking away from this. One is definitely, I think, focus on the customer. And always work backward from the customer. The second is, as you said rightly, measure the right metrics, measure the input metrics. Don't just look at output metrics all the time, because you will not know what to fix. I think the third one is data lakes are given. Get all the data at one place. Use the right tool, for the right use case. I think fourth, you spoke about the benefits of microservices are just immense, right? I mean, the agility that it gives you with this minimum handshake, right, and the ability to move really, really fast, and like build it very, very purposeful to that use case or to that category, so to say. And yeah, there's no running away from AI ML. I mean, embed it in your day-to-day life, and experiment with it, and move forward.
That's great summary, Sachin.
Thank you. Lovely
Thank you
talking to
so
you
much.
again. Thank you very much.